Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure this evening to have a great friend, Olivier Bassil. He's a songwriter, producer, arranger. He's worked with David Foster, has worked at Wórnner. He's participated in several projects with the likes of Stevie Wonder, Michael Bublé, Andrea Bocelli, Bryan Adams, Ariana Grande, Mark Anthony, Gwen Stefani, you name it. I mean, this guy has been around and has got a lot of experience, and it's a pleasure not only to call him my friend, but have him here and be able to ask him some questions for the audience in Abu Dhabi and across the world that are going to be seeing this.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, Gael, as well. I consider you one of my best friends, and I really was looking forward to doing this meeting. And I'm also a Berklee alumni, so I actually would do anything to share, spread the word with the Berklee students. I really believe in what you're doing in Abu Dhabi, especially, and very excited for all that you're building. A lot of really impressive and exciting stuff.
Well, thank you very much, Olivier. So maybe for the people that are going to be watching this, can you tell us a little bit about your journey in music? How it went from getting into it to the point that you find yourself these days in the music industry.
Of course. So I actually started out when I was 7-year-old making music, and I was put in a music school by my parents and started playing piano and violin at the time, and really had this classical heritage. And it's not until I was 15-year-old that I started playing in a band and arranging for that band and that was my own band. I was leading the band, but I arranged for the band, I wrote for the band. So I really got a hands-on experience in really producing and also preparing live shows at my level back then as a teenager in high school. And then I heard about a couple of schools. I heard about MI in Hollywood and then Berklee, and decided to go to Berklee. Luckily, I had the support from my family to help me go there, and definitely learned a great deal from Berklee. A lot more than I thought I would. I started by going to the summer programs at 16-year-old, 17-year-old. I think you and I met at the summer program, if I remember well.
I remember it was at a summer for sure. It was my first semester there. Yeah, that's when we met.
First semester. So then I met you at my first semester the year later, and had a blast. Berklee has so much to offer, literally everything you can think of. And after Berklee, struggling with the visa situation, I ended up going to London at first. I'm now in LA, so the reason why I got to LA eventually is because I finally got my green card. But I first started in London and did a master in business when I was in London. And that opened the door to me working inside a record label. I worked at Warner Music International in the HQs, actually working directly with the CEO and a few of the senior VPs. And I'm still in touch with all those people. In fact, I started a business with the CEO after he exited Warner. The music industry was already in an ever-changing mode. And so Paul Rene, Albertini, and myself, we started this digital business that's still going today. So I would call this my foray into the digital business world. And we did this for a few years. I learned a lot about media. But the music calling was always there, and I had always planned to go back to music. So when I came back to music, my knowledge of the business was very limited. I did not do music business at Berklee, so I won't blame Berklee for it. But my knowledge of the music creatively was pretty vast, and I just decided to write songs. At the time, I was an artist, and in fact, I worked with Gael. I worked with you, Gael, on that. But slowly I kind of realized that my calling was more production because I'm kind of a hyper creative personality. So I always have melody ideas and gimmicks and things that I can put in the background and help the melodies of an artist. But it's just, for me, I get fulfilled when I can oversee the whole project. And I realized that I would enjoy doing more projects rather than just focus on one and having to focus on the image and everything else. I'd rather just focus on what I do best, which is the music. And so long story short, when I was in New York and looking for a job, I didn't have a visa yet. And I was like, okay, I need to work under the table for someone. I need to figure out who to work for. My great friend Gael right here, you told me that I should, if I'm going to give away my time for free before I get the visa, then I should give it away for as an internship, I should give it away to the king. And that's when I realized, hey, I did meet David Foster 5 years ago at the time, now 13 years ago now, 12 years ago now. And maybe I should reach out to him. I have his email somehow, thanks to the feedback. And the way I had met David is actually while I was at Warner Music, hence the importance of putting yourself in the core of the business, one way or another, even if you're doing business. I was called to be in a session with Josh Groban, to coach Josh Groban in French. Okay, I'm French. I think you noticed that by now, but just letting you know. And so 5 years, 5 years before, I was in that studio at Abbey Road Studios. I'm sure you've heard of it in London.
Yeah, of course.
And coaching Josh to sing in French. And quickly the session, we spent about 2 hours. He's a very, very devoted artist in the studio, working really hard on the French. And we got the French to a really great level. It was Petit Papa Noël, a French Christmas song. And by the end of the session, there was another 2 hours of me and David sitting together, control board. I'm sorry, I'm going to deactivate those. I don't know where it's coming from. So yeah, sitting together. And I really just focused on delivering the top line, meaning the vocals, in the best possible way. And quickly this evolved into David telling me, hey, you have a great ear. You really need to pursue music. And that really struck me at the time because I didn't even know who David Foster was then, in detail at least. And I had heard his name, but that was about it. And I was really, really thinking, hey, there's something there. And unfortunately, my hands were tied up with all that business stuff with the CEO of Warner. So I couldn't really do anything about it. But 5 years later, when you told me, I don't know why I talked about you in the third person, you're right here. But when you told me to reach out to the best, I thought, yeah, I should reach out to David. And so I reached out to David, and his sister, James, called me 2 weeks later and told me that David remembered me and it was good timing, and he needed basically an assistant and wanted to try me out for a week with Mary J. Blige. And so I was like, of course, why not? I'm ready to work to clean the toilets in the studio in New York. I might as well work for Mary J. Blige in LA. Why not? And so all paid for, everything, hotel, plane, and incredible week. It felt like traveling, not only in space, but in time. I was in the elite, working in the best studio in the world with the best producer in the world, one of the best. I ended up really having a great time. And even though my role was supportive, I ended up doing a lot of creative work during that week, helping with the sounds, the productions, the arrangement. You end up picking up on so much just by being in the room. And by the end of the week, David asked Mary J. he actually disclosed to her that I wasn't part of the team yet. I was like, so Olivier's not part of the team yet. So what do you think of him? And she was like, oh, I thought he was all the way in. I thought he was part of the family. All the way, big thumbs up. So then David was like, okay, Mary J gives you a big thumbs up. You can come back and work with us. And then I waited a couple more months. As always, big opportunities take time. And then I got a call on a Friday night. Bryan Adams is about to record on Sunday morning. We need you there on Sunday morning. Can you move? So I literally put all my stuff in 3 FedEx boxes and moved to LA. Are you still there?
Yeah. So
all in all, it's been an incredible journey. And now it's been actually 7 years that I've been working with David, but the first 4 years were full-time. First five years actually were full-time. And we were at the heart of Universal Music. He was the CEO of Verve, actually the chairman of Verve. And I was his right-hand man there. And so I learned a lot about the business, about labels, production. I was running the studios there. We had 2. One that was the main studio David used, and another one where I think, Gael, I showed you both the studios, but the small one I was using, David let me use for a lot of my projects. And that's where I started growing my own career. And at first, like I said earlier, catching up on how the business works. I'm still learning how the business works, but I think I have a good hold of what to do now. And I think we all have a unique equation, and that unique equation is your own business plan. And that business plan is very different from person to person. And so I think that's why we all learn business, because we have to figure out how we contribute, how we add value to other people's lives. And when I say other people's lives, I don't just mean other artists or people who can pay us money. I also mean the audience. And so for me, it came under, kind of concretized itself by having the opportunity to work with Clever at first. And so actually a lot of artists came to me over the first 5 years of being with David to work with me. And I actually denied a lot of the artists, because at the time, for me, it was all about my songs and just writing my own songs. And I didn't really realize I was living in a box, that there was an opportunity there. But 5 years in, it really hit me once I got some one really talented artist to come to me. And I was like, this guy is just undeniable. It's just so fucking talented. Like, and his name is Clever. And he already went by Clever. It's his artist name. And he was locked in a contract with a bad contract with another producer, and that contract locked him in as a solo artist. So he really wanted to just write songs, and he was really open to the idea that I had already I wanted to build a huge catalog of songs. I always had this inner frustration that we can improve music right now. We can make even better songs. That's what's out there right now. We can go back to the 60s level of songwriting. And so the Beatles, or, stuff like that. Or Elton John, like I just love the classics. And while I love current production, I thought at the time that songwriting could like get to a new level. And so Clever really really embraced that vision of mine. And he actually thinks a lot like I do. And so that's 2015. Clever and I started writing 50, 100 songs together. And quickly, I started hustling the industry and reaching out to a lot of publishers. Again, working with David opened so many doors. Now what matters is which ones you close behind you and you actually make a deal with. And I ended up Clever and I ended up working very closely with one of the best creative directors in the industry in publishing, who's now an A&R. And her name is Amanda Sami at Cobalt. And she really is an incredible woman who, first of all, believed in us from day one. And second of all, connected Clever and I to so many of the best producers in town. We were really strictly songwriters at the time. So for us, connecting with producers was an end goal so we could build the full song. And doing that really opened so many doors creatively. And I still work with a lot of the producers that Amanda connected me to. Now, ironically, Amanda and us didn't end up signing a contract. Now she's in another company. She's at Capitol. And she discovered a few other people, including Billie Eilish in the meantime. I know she's the head of A&R for Capitol Records. So she did really great for herself. And me and Clever also are doing really great for ourselves. In fact, Clever is now an established artist. He got signed to Juice WRLD, and when his contract ended, he really went full stream in his solo career and applying all that we had developed melodically. And I still work with Clever. In fact, I'm writing and producing about half of his album with Republic right now. So yeah, going back to a couple years ago, Clever just decides to launch his solo project because he gets out of that deal with the bad producer. And he ended up signing very quickly, launches a song, self-released, with a great manager, Leslie, and launching that song, self-released, with a great distributor. And that distributor is the key ingredient here, because it was a distributor who actually had the connections in hip-hop. And Clever's this blended artist. He used to be a rapper. I made him a pop singer, and he ended up mixing the two and making trap. And he connected to Juice WRLD through that distributor. And Juice WRLD fell in love with him. Clever has that magic voice that the only artist, like I've worked with Stevie Wonder for a whole year with David, and Clever is the only artist that to me is on par with Stevie Wonder in terms of vocal. Oh. He's that great, like incredible range. He's just absolutely, the attitude is there, and the writing is almost the best part, like the best words, So rap artists like Juice WRLD and now like Post Malone, and like they all fall in love with his sound. They all like actually not more than fall in love, they're blown away by it because he's a real singer who does trap. And I'm not saying trap artists are not real singers, but they would agree with me that the way they're produced is usually more using like auto-tune and other techniques to like create a melody with a top line. So, and it goes with the sound. There's nothing wrong with being a rapper who sings. I actually love that. But Clever is a real singer, like a real singer, like on a Stevie Wonder level, kind of soul singer, you know. And so people compare him a lot to John Legend, you know, and he could have had that kind of like repertoire if he wanted to. But he decided to go trap, and I actually think it's genius because look at the business opportunities now. First and foremost, Juice WRLD signed him. Of course, now you know the side news that Juice WRLD passed away, but Clever is now carrying the flame for him. And before Juice WRLD passed away, Post Malone had already noticed Clever, and more than noticed. In fact, Post Malone now signed Clever, and he signed under Post Malone and Republic. So it's a major backup there. And so, all of that in his mid-30s. So that's like a little detail here. Yeah, go ahead. No,
I mean it's incredible to see how you went from you know, when we met in Berklee to where you're at right now, and it's been quite a you know, an amazing journey. I think that it might be interesting to hear a little bit about what skills got you in the room with people like Stevie Wonder and Andrea Bocelli. Like what are the skills that you feel allow you to hang in that space, in that room, and maybe share a memorable anecdote in the studio, similar to the one you were just talking about when you were with Josh Groban and David Foster. From your time with some of these artists, you know, is there another anecdote where you feel like, oh, if I didn't have this skill, I wouldn't have been there. It's what made me the perfect person to be there at that time.
That's a great question, and I'll answer both at the same time. Going through the timeline again, because I feel like I've covered Clever, who's obviously part of my career because he's the first artist I discovered, but I didn't really cover the other part, which is how did I go from songwriting to producing. And working with David, I wasn't really using either songwriting or producing to get in the door, to be there. So that's where the anecdote comes in. And really, the bottom line for me there is the skill. And again, I'm answering your question that I use to be in the room and to stay in the room with David musically. To answer musically first, and then I'll answer personally. Is the main skill musically is, well, I have perfect pitch, and I'm not saying you need to have perfect pitch to succeed, but that helps because I immediately caught like what key we're in. So even though my mind was working in a supportive role, if I was asked a question that pertained to helping with making the song, I knew the answers because my mind was always working. Okay, this is what's going on. One thing I learned quickly though, and that's more the personal front, is that I shouldn't talk. And when you're a teenager, when you're just a regular person, an amateur, you assume that being in a studio with other people, the fact that you're in the room means you should always give your opinion, because we all think, oh, we listen to music every day, so we can just give our opinion. But the truth of the matter is you should never give your opinion unless you ask for it. And I know that sounds kind of counterproductive, like, hold on, it's music, we're jamming here. But that's really the opposite of what a session is. A producer's role is to make the decisions. If you make suggestions unasked for, you're trying to do their job for them. So you're actually threatening their role. And that's where a great listener, a great supporter will just sit there, say nothing until asked. But when asked, that is your chance to show what you're worth. And actually, if you realize if you don't talk a lot of the suggestions you would have made are kind of obsolete by the end of it. And you really just retain just one probably great suggestion by the time you're asked. And so in my case with David, a lot of my suggestions pertained to my skills for arranging. And at first, for the first 3 years, I ended up hiring somebody that you introduced me to, Gael, from Berklee, actually, Andreas, who's incredible because it ended up being too much work for me. But for the first 3 years, I was doing all the copying for David. I was literally doing all the charts and at times actual arranging. And that was a very, very rewarding experience for me because I really learned a lot about David's piano playing, David's arranging. And obviously, I was in charge of hiring all those musicians. So I developed those relationships with the best session players in the world. Now, if I I'm developing this young guy who's 14 and he's an amazing rock singer. And I get J.R. Robinson, the most recorded drummer in history, who's on Thriller, to just play for me on that record. So as a producer, I have access to the very best musicians in the world on my records, thanks to my experience with David and thanks to arranging, but also coordinating with a lot of musicians. So your job becomes really tenfold. You have A&R, you have arranging, you have performing at times, you ended up playing instruments or singing, you have participating in the production, so that's production, you know, it's really a lot of hats that you're wearing. So the anecdote here is really like, yeah, needed to make a chart, I made one, you know, needed to talk to a drummer about how he's playing drums, I made the comments, you know, so you know, and that's what drew me back to music. I knew I had the inner ability to interact with other people in any situation in a way that was conducive to success. And so that's like the anecdotes with David. And it was very easy with David to get all those big names because I was just sitting in the room with him. So all I had to do is wait for Bryan Adams to come in, or Stevie Wonder, or Michael Bublé. And my job was very much a relationship. It was also, it's very psychological, as you know, Gael, to produce an artist. And I was part of that psychology to an extreme degree because it was really just me, David, and Joachim. And Joachim, he's his right-hand man who does all the engineering and co-producing from a purely computer standpoint. You met Joachim. Mm-hmm. And my role was very, very social. And I had to really interact with the artist. So the psychology and the management of the record, all of that, I had a very big part in that. And to the point that a few artists asked for me to come to the promo tours, to be there with them and to support them. Diana Krall asked for me to come to France and England to help her and just be there, support. And of course, there's no greater honor than when somebody asks you to be there because they feel that it will help them, even if your presence will help them. And in the case of Diana Krall, her husband, Elvis Costello, came to the studio when we were recording in New York. And he knew all our names. He knew my name. He knew so many things about me. So it's not every day you meet a great legend and they know more about you than you do about them. And obviously for me, I'm always respectful. I respect his stature, what he's done. And so for me, it's incredible. So that's kind of what happened with David. But even so, like I have to say, from a career standpoint, my career wasn't made yet when I was just working with David. And we could have had that exact conversation literally 3-4 years ago. It would be the same. But a lot happened since then. So to answer the first part of your question, which is how basically what I take from your question is how it evolved, right? From songwriting to producing and what I'm doing now. I actually, first of all, David retired, which was a great opportunity for me because after a certain point, you really realize that you've learned most of what you can learn from a certain situation, and change is the most important thing. And I always embraced change in my whole life. And that change was one of the best changes ever because suddenly I had 80% of my time to focus on doing sessions. And I had David as a mentor supporting me for the sessions. And I had all the contacts. And so I decided to really, when Clever went solo, again, because he could, and I supported him doing that, I decided to spend the rest of my time producing more artists. And there is a gap in the market right now that I'm feeling. And that gap is artist development. And
there's my next question for that. I know you've been working a lot with emerging artists and developing them. So I would want to ask you, what is the most common mistake that you see? And, you know, for emerging artists that you're not working with at the moment, what is the best advice you would give to them? You know, so on one end, I'm sure you've identified something that commonly happens, and I'm sure that is most useful to maybe some of the people watching this today.
Yeah, I would say the gap is the advice I would give them is find it's 80% vision, 20% execution. So find your vision, find who you are. And when I say that, don't idealize on who you are. Find who you really are. Find who is that artist you can be, where you're going to be the best at what you do, not in a competitive way, in an authentic way. How are you authentically unique in what you do? And how are you going to have this sound that definitely refers to what's going on right now, which is why I always ask artists to prepare a playlist before they work with me of 3-4 songs that are very current from the past 3 to 6 months, and use that to build your own sound. And you cannot have enough great songs, but they also need to fit your brand. That's where the 20% execution comes in. And find a great team around you that can help you build those songs. But first and foremost, make sure you have the vision that makes you unique. And I've done that with artists over the past few years. So I'm using this as an example now. But one of the artists, for example, she's been working with me for 3 years. And at first, nobody really believed in her. I sent her to the best vocal coach in town, and she was like, no, not really. I don't really believe in her. I believed in her because I think there's greatness in many more people than people think. And I ended up working with her on a weekly basis. And we ended up, over the past 3 years, writing so many songs. And don't be scared. Don't try to rewrite your own material. Write new songs because you keep progressing. Writing is a muscle. Keep using that muscle. When you work out, you're not going to lift the same weight over and over again. You have to evolve. You have to change the exercises. You have to surprise your body. Collaborate. Collaboration is king. And other people you collaborate with not only will teach you things, but will also show you how you're different. And sometimes that struggle you get with other writers where you're like, I didn't get to do what I wanted. That's where you need to go, where you want it to go. And so do all those things. And over time, you will know when you have a song that's you. And that first song that's you need to encapsulate that first song and develop on it and have more of it. And once you have your unique sound, it's really the word for it. It's a sound. You can really develop that sound and have something unique. And the next step from that, I think, is to release. And even if you don't have a huge team, just put it online and find ways to work with other people on marketing, on playlisting. And I did that with one of my artists, Bella, last summer. And now we have a manager. Thanks to that song that did really good on Spotify. It went over 200,000 streams. The song is called F Girl. And we got an incredible amount of requests from labels. We got Warner and Universal in touch with us now based on that song. But most importantly, we also had this guy who's an amazing manager, Desi, who was at Columbia for 10 years. So really legit A&R guy. And now he's developing management as his main thing. And he met with us, and a 2-hour studio meeting right here ended up in a 4-hour night restaurant and everything where we talked about the business, everything. And he ended up wanting to manage Bella because that's why we were meeting, but also managing me. And that's the last leg of my testimony of what I've done so far career-wise. Over the past 12, 16 months, I've been actually... my guitar playing, talking about skills, has been really, really noticed in the hip hop world. And so I started creating guitar tracks that having the backbone of songs with artists in the number one on the charts, on the rap charts, like NBA Youngboy, Tory Lanez, amazing R&B singer. I've had cuts with all of them over the past 12 to 16 months. And having Desi as a manager has helped me get paid for that and have someone else than myself negotiate with the labels on the deals. A lot of the deals are made after the release. So to answer your question on the artistry, find your unique differentiator. Think of yourself as a business and build those products, which are your songs, put them out, and then great things will happen to you. Like great things are happening to us right now.
Great. I think that's great advice. And I what I retain also as something important there is this idea of creating and outputting songs, not just dwelling on one or rewriting your own songs like you were saying, but actually writing song after song and developing that songwriting muscle, I think, is key, right? Because it's really hard otherwise to find your sound if you haven't done that work of going around different styles and trying different ideas for songs until you actually it becomes more apparent what you've become as a songwriter or as an artist. So
it's so true. It's so true.
That's true, definitely.
There is always a temptation to rewrite the same song just to develop on what you said, and it's so tempting because you love your babies, and you want to rewrite them and everything, but you need to really be prolific and just keep writing. Every day write a new song. Don't stop. Because that big hit is coming, but it won't come until you start actually doing this, and repeating the effort every day.
What does a typical day look in the life of a songwriter, and what's the discipline? Because I think a lot of people think, oh, just sit around and wait for inspiration to come, and so how do you do that? How do you wait around for inspiration to come? I'm sure you don't, but can you speak a little bit about what a typical day as a songwriter looks like?
Of course. That's where collaboration helps, by the way, because if you sit around on your own, it's sometimes hard to find ideas, right? And collaborating with someone, you'll start the session by talking to them and being maybe talking what's going on in your life. If I start with an artist, I ask them what's going on in your life that maybe we can talk about. And sometimes the artist will say, yes, I have this going on, I have a relationship issue, and I think this would be a great song. Or they'll have nothing they want to share. And then you'll be like, well, I have a bunch of concepts that I have here on a notebook that we can maybe work from. But I really like the question of inspiration, and I'm trying to think of how to answer it best. And for me, and that's my really personal approach, because I think inspiration is a very personal thing. It comes from the heart. 100% of my inspirations come from not being in the studio. So for me, it's about finding the balance and doing things outside the studio, having a social life, which right now is very digital with the quarantine, but you know what I mean.
Sure.
Going out in nature, going to the beach, or going to the mall, doing simple things, But you go out and suddenly you hear a song, and it's an 80s song in some supermarket or something, and that's where the inspiration was struck. Inspiration doesn't have to be snobbish. I mean, it's just inspiration can come from anything. And to be inspired, I think you just need to live life to the fullest, and inspiration will come. The worst thing you can do for inspiration is sit in a room and just work on it like a scientific tool, because that's not what it is. Inspiration doesn't come from a mathematical formula or a strategizing session. It's really, inspiration comes from just being yourself, and it comes from unexpected ways, So you have to source it from being outside the studio. And my approach is I actually don't work 100% of the time, like a lot of producers do. I work when I need to and when I'm inspired. And usually I find that when I need to work, I'm inspired. And that's because I haven't overdone it. It's a capital. You have to use it wisely, and you have to respect it. Respect your own gifts.
But at the same time, you're in a place in your craft where you've got the tools and the ability to take that inspiration and turn it into a song and turn it into a product, which I think that when you're not at that stage, and you might agree, I don't know, but when you're not at that stage, you actually need to spend the time developing that craft, that ability to transcribe an idea and write it. And that actually does take the discipline of working in a consistent way.
Yeah, and there are techniques, because there are days when, for example, now I have a name. I've touched upon that quickly, but to sum it up, I have a name in hip hop, and I have a bunch of artists, producers reaching out to me for tracks, and I have to build those tracks alone. So this is a situation where I have to be creative on my own, set my own time, and that's one thing that I used to not even do before. I used to just collaborate. So the way I approach this, and this is a technique that might help you and your students, I think this technique is very useful. It's basically, the quote, professional steals, amateur borrows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So did I say it right? Yes. Okay. So basically, a great way to write, if you have no ideas and you're a musician like I am, and you're really trying to create music, before the words maybe. And I can give you other techniques for the words later. But for the music, my technique is I'll channel something. But rather than just listening to it, sometimes just if I'm with an artist in pop, I'll listen to 3 songs and the ideas just fall on me. They just come right away. But if I'm really struggling on my own and I really want to create a track in maybe an area I haven't done before, there is a way to do that. And what I do is I take a song that I obviously love, like a hit, right? And I just, more than channel it, I just figure out what exactly is going on with the hi-hat, with the little details, with the drums, tempo. Maybe I'll have the same tempo. I'm allowed to have the same tempo. That's professional stealing. It's my right, right? I'm allowed to, you have to really draw the line between what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed. And trust me, I'm the last one to steal or to copy. And because I'm super original, I believe first and foremost in making original music that hasn't been done before. And that's the intent here. So don't copy the instrument, don't copy the key, don't copy the chords, don't copy the melodies. That's the stuff you don't go, you can't go there. But you can copy the structure. You can copy the vibe. You can copy, not the vibe, sorry, that's not good. Blurred lines, no good. But you can copy the groove, right? Or just the drums or one element from one song. And then you have the backbone, and having that backbone, which is maybe the drum, the beat, without the bass, because the bass has the key. So, but like all those things, and then you do something different on top. You mix and match, and you end up with something completely new.
Sure. So basically, what you're saying is you grab a little piece of inspiration from different songs to eventually kind of get it started or get it going.
If you need to grab it from different songs, yes. For me, in hip hop, I usually grab it from one song, and the rest is 100% me. But sometimes it's a couple songs. But like the structure is a very good technique for production, for producers out here, because so many genius ideas are in a song that we don't even notice. Like for example, here drums are going to be filtered for 4 bars, or we're just going to have a halftime, like twice slower and down the octave section. You can learn from that structure. It's genius, and it worked for the artist. Most importantly, it's the proven formula.
It's essentially it's production analysis. It's understanding what works and what doesn't work in a specific song. And when you understand what works, you borrow from that, because obviously it's something that works in terms of building the song, or setting the groove, or grabbing people's attention throughout the song. So certainly, I think that that's a great thing to do, especially when you have like writer's block, or you have to come with something and inspiration is not there. So definitely, yeah.
And again, I'm trying to answer your question the best possible way. These are techniques that work. It's not a guide to songwriting. I mean, if you can write from nothing, even better. Then but it's these are techniques that help, and there are other ones. I was going to share some about words, and just browse the internet and look for what topics out there on magazines and or even Instagram or Pinterest. It's a great one. What quotes on Pinterest can generate a song idea, and you'll be surprised how quickly you can get one.
Yeah, for
all you need is one hook. If you have one hook, like the words, one word that's really great, the whole song will be produced from that. You have to find that gel that connects everything in the inspiration realm.
Definitely. Similar to what you were saying, there's a technique I've used in the past, which is you grab a song that you like, and you replace the words to that song, right? Then you've got the lyric, like the lyrics, the lyrical structure. You remove the whole music and you rewrite a completely new melody and completely new harmony, and you change the tempo. So essentially, what you're borrowing from is the lyrical structure. So the number of syllables and where the rhymes fall.
That was an exercise in my Berklee book.
Huh?
That was an exercise in my Berklee book.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, and I did it, and it was great. I remember doing it on John Mayer.
Yeah. So it's quite effective too. Well, just to kind of we're ready to most likely wrap this up very soon. We're running out of time. I know you're very busy today, but I like to do something that I call rapid fire questions. And Olivier hasn't seen these questions. And the dynamic is basically you just answer with a short answer, first thing that comes to mind. And it's going to be 10 of these, so get ready. Ready?
Do I get a grade at the end?
No. Analog or digital? First thing that comes to mind. Huh?
Analog.
Okay. Single writer or co-writing?
Co-writing.
David Foster.
Producer.
Reggaeton.
Tropical.
Nice, France, London, or LA?
LA.
Performance right organizations.
ASCAP.
Croissant or donuts?
Croissant.
Major modes or minor modes?
Major.
Instagram.
Instagram. Socializing.
Streaming platforms.
Progress.
Okay, awesome. You made it.
I made it. Did I get like a 6 out of 10? I feel like I lost an analog, but I was thinking deeply about analog because it was like, I feel like digital is just at the pursuit of copying analog, basically. So that's why I say analog for me is the goal.
Sure. I mean, but these days you find yourself mainly working inside of, I'm guessing most of your work is happening in digital audio workstation. And,
yeah, it's here.
In the box, basically, right? Yeah.
But if I can make it sound analog, then I feel like I'm doing something.
So you mean like philosophically or technically speaking?
Just feelings-wise, It needs to feel real. It needs to have a human element to it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's key. I mean, ultimately, especially when you're talking about songwriting and connecting, you want to connect with people, and the only way you can do that is making them feel human.
Yeah.
Right.
And also, one thing is the number one element in record is the vocal, and I feel like I know you agree with me because that's how you produce so greatly. But it's the more real a singer is, the less digitalized a singer is, the better, right? And so that's where analog comes in for me. It's like how do I recreate what real singing is?
Yeah. Well, and when you talk about real singing these days, especially in the pop world, with so much processing that can be done on a vocal, where do you draw the line between, a authentic, raw sounding recording and a polished, heavily affected vocal? And I think that is a matter of taste and of style, and they're generally writing for, certainly.
But trends, because there's been eras in music of trends as well.
Trends, yeah. But you're right. It's ultimately, even if you do all that processing, it's about making sure that the people can connect to the human side of it.
Absolutely.
For sure. Well, Olivier, thank you so much for spending this time and
thank you,
and sharing some insight. I'm sure it's going to be eye-opening for a lot of people hearing this. And I think
and there's so much more we could talk about. But if there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to address them, answer them on email or another Q&A, whatever feels best.
Thank you very much, Olivier. And I think the key thing here is that it's interesting to see how your journey has been a journey where it's taking you to your own success, and how can that inspire other people? Because I mean, the key obviously is that we all have different journeys. And there's not one single way to get to where we're supposed to get, right? But it's always interesting and rewarding to see how somebody has been able to go from point A to point B. And again, thank you very much for spending this time.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you everybody for tuning in, and stay tuned, and there will be more of these coming your way. Take care. Stay safe.
Bye, guys.